A 30-year-old single mother sits in a cafe in Edinburgh, writing by hand because she can't afford a computer. She's living on government benefits. Her marriage has failed. She's clinically depressed. She has a baby daughter to feed, but she has a story about a boy wizard named Harry Potter. For the next 2 years, she'll type up her manuscript on an old typewriter and send it to publishers. 12 publishers will reject it. They'll say children don't want to read long books anymore. They'll say fantasy doesn't sell. They'll say no one wants a story about a wizard. But on the 13th try, a small London publisher called Bloomsbury will say yes. They'll pay her £2,500. They'll tell her to get a day job because children's books don't make money. They'll print just 500 hardback copies, most of them going to libraries. Nobody expects anything. But within months, those 500 books will ignite a wildfire. Kids will pass them to their friends. Teachers will read them in classrooms. Parents will hunt down copies. And J.K. Rowling will go from welfare to becoming the first billionaire author in history. This is the story of how 12 rejections and 500 copies became the best-selling book series of all time. Let's rewind to 1990. J.K. Rowling, Joanne Rowling at the time, was 25 years old, working as a researcher and bilingual secretary in London. One day, on a delayed train from Manchester to London, an idea popped into her head. A boy who didn't know he was a wizard. The character arrived fully formed. His name was Harry Potter. Rowling spent the entire 4-hour train ride imagining Harry's world. Hogwarts, the wizarding community, the scar, the prophecy. She didn't have a pen, so she just sat there, building the story in her mind. When she got home, she started writing immediately. Harry Potter consumed her. She wrote outlines, character backstories, and detailed world-building notes. But life had other plans. In 1990, Rowling's mother died of multiple sclerosis at just 45 years old. Rowling was devastated. She'd been working on Harry Potter for only a few months, and now the person she most wanted to share it with was gone. Her mother's death deeply influenced the story. Themes of loss, love, and the pain of losing a parent became central to Harry Potter. Grief-stricken, Rowling moved to Portugal in 1991 to teach English. There, she met and married a Portuguese journalist. In 1993, she gave birth to her daughter, Jessica. But the marriage was troubled. It was abusive. Rowling left with her baby and returned to Edinburgh, Scotland, to be near her sister. She arrived in Edinburgh in 1994 with almost nothing. She was a single mother on welfare, struggling with clinical depression. She later described this period as the lowest point of her life. She had no money, no job, and a baby to care for. But she still had the Harry Potter manuscript. Rowling would take her daughter to cafés in Edinburgh, like the now famous Elephant House, and write while her baby slept. She couldn't afford to heat her apartment, so the café became her workspace. She wrote in longhand. She couldn't afford a computer. By 1995, Rowling had finished the first Harry Potter book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Now came the hard part: finding a publisher. Rowling typed the manuscript on an old manual typewriter. She sent it to literary agents. Most didn't respond. Some sent polite rejections. Finally, an agent named Christopher Little agreed to represent her. He warned her that children's books rarely made money, but he believed in the story. Little sent the manuscript to 12 publishers. All 12 rejected it. Penguin said no. HarperCollins said no. Some said the book was too long for children. Others said fantasy was out of fashion. One editor said, "Children just aren't interested in wizards anymore." Rowling was crushed. She'd spent 5 years writing this book. She poured her grief, her hope, and her love into it. And no one wanted it. But Little didn't give up. He sent it to one more publisher, Bloomsbury, a small independent publishing house in London. At Bloomsbury, the manuscript landed on the desk of editor Barry Cunningham. He took it home to read over the weekend. His 8-year-old daughter Alice read the first chapter. She loved it. She immediately demanded the next chapter. That was the moment Barry Cunningham knew. This book was special. In 1996, Bloomsbury offered Rowling a publishing deal. The advance was £2,500, about $4,000 at the time. It was enough to help Rowling get by, but it wasn't life-changing money. Bloomsbury had one condition. Rowling should publish under her initials instead of her full name, Joanne Rowling. They were worried that boys wouldn't read a book written by a woman. So she became J.K. Rowling. The K stood for Kathleen, her grandmother's name. Barry Cunningham also gave her a warning. You'll never make money writing children's books. Get a day job. Rowling took the advice seriously. She started studying for a teaching qualification, thinking she'd need a backup plan. But she also kept writing, because Harry Potter wasn't done yet. On June 26, 1997, Bloomsbury published Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The first print run was tiny, 500 hardback copies. About 300 of them went to libraries. The rest went to bookstores. Bloomsbury didn't expect much. It was a modest book by an unknown author. They hoped to sell enough copies to justify a second print run. But something incredible happened. Kids who read the book fell in love with it. They told their friends. They brought it to school. Teachers started reading it aloud in classrooms. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Within weeks, Harry Potter was selling out in bookstores. Parents were calling shops asking for copies. Librarians were putting kids on waiting lists. Bloomsbury scrambled to print more copies. They did a second print run, then a third, then a fourth. By the end of 1997, the book had won several awards, including the Nestlé Smarties Book Prize. In 1998, Scholastic bought the U.S. publishing rights for $105,000, a record-breaking amount for a children's book at the time. The U.S. edition was renamed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The book exploded in America. It became a bestseller overnight. Rowling released the second book, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, in 1998. It was an instant hit. Then came The Prisoner of Azkaban in 1999. The Goblet of Fire in 2000. Each book sold faster and in higher numbers than the last. By the time the seventh and final book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, was released in 2007, the series had become a global phenomenon. The Harry Potter series has now sold over 600 million copies worldwide. It's been translated into 80 languages. It's the best-selling book series in history. The movies made over $7.7 billion at the box office. J.K. Rowling became the first billionaire author in history. At one point, she was wealthier than the Queen of England. And it all started with 500 books. So what happened? 12 publishers rejected Harry Potter. They said it was too long, too old-fashioned, not marketable. But they were wrong. They were looking at the market as it was, not as it could be. Rowling created something that didn't exist yet, a story so compelling that it changed what kids wanted to read. Bloomsbury didn't have a massive marketing budget. They printed 500 copies and hoped for the best, but they trusted the story. And the story was so good that it sold itself. Kids passed the book to their friends. Parents bought it for their children. Teachers read it in classrooms. That organic, authentic enthusiasm couldn't be bought. Bloomsbury told Rowling to get a day job because children's books don't make money. But Rowling didn't write Harry Potter to make money. She wrote it because she had to, because the story demanded to be told. And that authenticity, that refusal to compromise, is why it resonated with millions. Every single rejection taught Rowling something. It made her refine the story. It made her believe in it even more. When Bloomsbury finally said yes, Rowling was ready. She knew the story was worth fighting for. J.K. Rowling was broke, rejected 12 times, told to get a day job, published with 500 copies. But she refused to give up on Harry Potter. She believed in the story when no one else did. And that belief turned 500 books into a global empire, because sometimes all it takes is one yes, and 500 copies, and a story that refuses to die.